everybody. It's great to be back. So the three of us today are going to share with you the results of a very, we think, important and interesting project we've been involved with over the past year. As some of you know, my company, AgeWave, and Bank of America Merrill Lynch, several years ago decided to chart out all the different dimensions of life and retirement and then spend enormous amounts of time and resources trying to figure out what matters to people with regard to their housing, their health, their family, their relationships, their giving, their leisure, and all these different dimensions of life and retirement. And what we found is that no one had ever really studied all of them before. There had been pieces of the puzzle looked at. What you're going to hear today is a little bit about a different way to think about this age wave, a different way to think about longevity. What I find, being a part of this discussion for 40 years now about the aging of our population, is that the discussion has a narrative to it. And the narrative often has to do with entitlement, has to do with protection, has to do with security, has to do with poverty, has to do with housing, has to do with families, all important and essential themes. Increasingly over the last several years, it's also had to do with purchases. We hear talk about older adults as consumers. But the issue of giving and the issue of older people as citizens with purpose doesn't surface very often. So we'd like to turn your attention to that topic today. And what I invite you to do is to take all the things you currently think about aging and older people and what their role is and how we regard them and how we help them, and just park it for a little while and allow us together to share with you some of what we've learned and see if perhaps it doesn't give you a different view of the whole thing. When we look at older people, when we look at America's 65 million retirees, what do we see? What do we see? When we look at older adults, when we look at retirees, do we see people in need of help or do we see people prepared to help? And of course, the answer is both. The way we're going to take a look at this is I'm first going to kind of set up the issue of giving generally in America. And then we're going to look at retirees and where they stand with regard to giving. And then Cindy's going to talk a little bit about the whole issue of when people give, do they lose something or perhaps do they gain? Olympia is going to cast us into the future and take a peek at how giving might change in the years to come and what the opportunities might be and also what the obstacles are. And then I'm going to come back up and try to tie it all together and give it a number, give it an upside. Let us take a look at what's possible with the idea that we might be able to set in motion today a revolution that will change everything for all time. Somebody said, cool. I agree. First, it turns out that giving is at the heart of America. We are a very generous culture. And when we stepped back to look at this project about a year ago, we began to realize that there are different currencies of giving. And they're all fine. One currency is money. When you hear the word giving or contribution, you might think about people writing checks or making donations or putting a few dollars into a basket at their church on the weekend. All fine. But giving is also about minutes. You may not have money, or you may prefer to give of yourself. You may prefer to help out. We call that volunteerism. And third is meaning. There's a big issue having to do with living a long life. You know, I've used this phrase before that they say in Africa, when an elder dies, it's like a library burning down. One of the advantages of living a long life is that you get to accumulate a great many experiences. And you also often get to make sense of it. So you have wisdom, you have knowledge, you have legacy to pass on. So let's look at all of those as combining currencies when we think about giving. Turns out that America always rates one of the top 1 or 2 highest nations in the world in terms of the degree to which people in the country give relative to other countries. And in fact, charitable giving overall has tripled in the last 20 years in America, which is quite spectacular. So notwithstanding people's concern about supporting themselves or their concern about their financial well-being, people reach into their pockets and give a lot. Interestingly, people often think, oh, the giving, that's the big corporations. And even your organization may think, oh, if we're going to raise money, that's the big corporations or that's the foundations. Well, it turns out the corporations are responsible for about 5% of all the charitable giving in America, foundations about 15%, but 80% of all the giving in this country is given by individuals from their hearts. Another interesting theme. People often think, oh, well, rich people can give. poor people don't give. Well, that's wrong. Turns out that people of all income levels, all asset levels, all levels of financial well-being are charitable in this country. In fact, when you look at the degree to which people give as a proportion of how much they have, lowest income people are in many ways the biggest givers of all. In addition, we volunteer quite a lot. Americans volunteer last year 7.7 billion hours. 7.7 billion hours. But then we ask, well, who gives the most? Might as well ask it, see what it says. This was interesting, for me, seminal. And you're going to see towards the end of this presentation how this all ties together and springs us into the future. Retirees today make up 31% of the adult population of America. But last year, they were responsible for 42% of all the financial contributions in this country. And unbelievably, 45% of all the volunteer hours. Retirees are the biggest givers in our nation. So I'm at a dinner a few weeks ago, and we're talking about this amazing thing about older people being such contributors and wanting to contribute. And one of the gentlemen at my table was not only an executive at Bank of America, but he was at the board of Boys and Girls Clubs of America. Let's just use that one as an example. Boys and Girls Clubs have been around for over a century, helps often inner city kids who are struggling and challenged. 50% of all the kids that come up through Boys and Girls Clubs of America say that it actually saved their lives, and that's everybody from Denzel Washington to astronauts. But the Boys and Girls Clubs, with their 4,000 chapters, are having a hard time recruiting 30 and 40-year-old volunteers because a lot of young people are strapped with 2 jobs and raising their own families. And he turned to me in dinner and he says, wait a minute, you're telling me that there's 65 million retirees in this country who want to help, and we haven't thought of going after creating bridges to that community. And you're going to see thousands of organizations coming to realize that as the word gets out.
Warren Buffett has made a commitment to donate 99% of his wealth to philanthropy. By current estimates, that could be close to $50 billion. However, he thinks the real philanthropist is someone who actually makes a sacrifice.
I mean, I have the much greater admiration, frankly, for the person who drops $5 or $1 in a collection plate on Sunday, where it makes a difference in whether they go take their kids to a movie or whether they go eat out or something of the sort.
26, well, 28.
One woman is giving up time and much of her own retirement money to feed others. Most every day, Charlotte Tidwell delivers food to hungry folks in Portsmouth, Arkansas. The 69-year-old woman runs a volunteer food bank, paying for most of it with her own money.
We thank the Lord for this lady here, Mrs. Tidwell, for helping us out in the time of need.
It's better than oxygen.
Larry Barnett says he's been to every VA in the country. That's about 3,000 visits. Barnett shares his baseball stories and what it was like being an umpire, but he says it really just comes down to sharing his gratitude.
Because what they did, the sacrifices they made, I was able to have a dream job.
Habitat for Humanity is starting a home building blitz.
Volunteers are all suiting up in hard hats for one great cause, to build homes for families in need.
Thanks to a retired Indianapolis firefighter, a disabled American vet will get a new life of mobility.
It's an incredible story. That firefighter Bob Lowe donated $16,000 to the Wounded Warrior Project to pay for a track chair.
A local woman celebrates her 103rd birthday today by donating her time. She's serving coffee and tea as a volunteer at the Montclair Senior Center, and she's been doing it for the last 25 years. Her outfit is a gift from friends who say she is a real-life Wonder Woman.
I could never pay back all the people that have supported me, but I can pay it forward.
We wanted to hear more about it, but she had to get back to work.
Yeah, thank you.